The winter sun hung low over the horizon, casting a pale, golden glow across the small lakeside town of Maple Ridge. The lake itself, a sprawling expanse of deep blue water, was now a glimmering sheet of ice, its surface reflecting the colors of the sky like a mirror. This was the heart of winter, the kind of cold that numbs your fingers even through thick gloves. On the edge of the frozen lake stood Daniel Harper, a 32-year-old carpenter who had lived in the town his entire life. He was a quiet man known for his patience and devotion to his dog, a golden retriever named Max. The two were inseparable. Every morning before sunrise, Daniel and Max would go for a walk around the lake. Max loved the snow, bounding through drifts of it like an overgrown puppy despite his 7 years of age. That morning, the wind had been sharper than usual. It bit at Daniel's face as he trudged through the snow, Max trotting a few feet ahead, his breath forming tiny clouds in the air. Daniel had heard warnings about the ice on the lake. It wasn't thick enough yet to hold weight, and town officials had posted signs advising people and their pets to stay away. But Max, eager as always, didn't understand the danger. He darted ahead, his tail wagging wildly. "Max, stay close," Daniel called out, his voice muffled by the scarf wrapped tightly around his mouth. Max barked, a playful sound that echoed across the frozen expanse. And then, before Daniel could react, the dog dashed onto the ice. Daniel's heart lurched. "Max, no." The golden retriever skidded a few feet across the slick surface, chasing what appeared to be a stray duck feathered drifting in the wind. But suddenly, the sound of cracking echoed through the still air. The ice beneath Max splintered like glass. Daniel dropped the coffee thermos he'd been holding and sprinted toward the lake's edge. "Max, come back." Max turned, his ears flattening as if he understood the fear in Daniel's voice. But it was too late. With a sharp, sickening crack, the ice gave way. Max plunged into the freezing, dark water. A strangled bark erupted from the hole before silence. Only ripples remained. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The cold wind whipped at his face, but he felt nothing but a surge of adrenaline. Without thinking, he kicked off his boots and stripped off his heavy coat, tossing them onto the snow. "Hold on, buddy. I'm coming," he muttered, his voice shaking. He sprinted onto the ice. Every step creaked and groaned under his weight. He could feel the thin sheet shifting beneath him, but his focus was locked on the dark hole ahead, where Max had disappeared. "Max!" he shouted again, his voice breaking. When he reached the edge of the hole, the icy water churned with frantic movement. Max's head bobbed above the surface, for an instant, his eyes wide, his paws clawing at the jagged ice, trying to pull himself out. Daniel dropped to his knees, reaching out. The water was so dark, so cold, it seemed to suck the warmth from the air. "Come on, Max, come here." Max let out a weak bark, his teeth chattering, and slipped beneath the surface again. Daniel didn't hesitate. He plunged his arms into the freezing water, the shock like electricity running up his veins. The cold stole his breath instantly. Gritting his teeth, he dove in head first. The world turned silent and black. The icy water enveloped him, crushing and suffocating. His lungs screamed for air, but through the blur he saw Max's golden fur drifting downward like a fading light. He kicked hard, reaching out through the freezing darkness. His fingers brushed against fur. Grabbing tightly, he pulled Max toward him, wrapping his arms around the dog's body. Max's eyes were wide with terror, but he didn't fight. With every ounce of strength left in him, Daniel pushed upward. His head broke the surface first, gasping desperately for air. He hauled Max up with him, shoving the dog onto the edge of the ice. The ice cracked and splintered, but somehow held. "Go, crawl," Daniel rasped. Max, trembling violently, scrambled onto the ice, collapsing in the snow, coughing up water. Daniel tried to pull himself out next. His hands were numb, his body heavy. The cold was relentless, dragging him downward. He clung to the ice, his fingers slipping. Then, from the shore, a voice shouted, "Hold on." Daniel turned his head. A man in a heavy coat was running toward them, dragging what looked like a long branch. Daniel's vision blurred, the world tilted. He felt his grip failing, but then the branch slid across the ice toward him. "Grab it." The man yelled. With the last of his strength, Daniel latched onto the branch. The stranger heaved, pulling him inch by inch out of the water. Daniel collapsed onto the ice, shivering uncontrollably. Max crawled to him, pressing his wet fur against Daniel's face. The dog whined softly, licking his cheek. "You're okay," Daniel whispered hoarsely. "We're okay." Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called emergency services. As paramedics wrapped blankets around him and loaded Max into a heated vehicle, Daniel glanced back at the lake, the frozen, treacherous expanse that had nearly claimed them both. He pulled Max closer, burying his face in the dog's fur. "Never again," he muttered. But as Max nuzzled his chest, wagging his tail weakly, Daniel knew he'd do it all over again if it meant saving his best friend.